when my husband pointed his index finger at the oak door of our sprawling estate and screamed at me to get out. He was certain he had won the ultimate victory. He stood in the grand foyer with his chest puffed out, surrounded by his pregnant mistress and his overbearing, critical mother, fully believing he had just discarded me like yesterday's trash. He proudly bragged about taking over the lease and throwing me out onto the cold street without a second thought. But hidden behind his fragile arrogance was a terrifying financial secret that was about to destroy his entire world. He had no idea that the property management firm he had been paying $5,000 a month to for the past 3 years was legally owned by me. My name is Nia. I am 34 years old and I work as a forensic accountant specializing in corporate asset recovery. I have spent my entire career understanding the true hidden value of properties, the intricate webs of offshore accounts, and the terrifyingly predictable nature of greedy people. Before I tell you exactly how I used my husband's ego to legally and systematically demolish his fake empire, let me know exactly where you are watching from, in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button immediately if you believe karma is best served ice cold and accompanied by a strict federal court order. Growing up in a tough, hard-working neighborhood in Atlanta, my parents explicitly taught me the value of relentless hard work, quiet strategy, and complete financial independence. I took those crucial lessons to heart, building an ironclad, lucrative career. When I met Darius 5 years ago, he seemed like the perfect match. He was a newly promoted branch manager at a respected commercial bank. He dressed exclusively in sharp, tailored suits, drove a leased sedan, and spoke with an overwhelming confidence that effortlessly charmed everyone around him. But I quickly learned that his bold confidence was mostly a fragile, paper-thin facade propped up by his manipulative mother. Mama Shirley was considered a pillar of the local megachurch community. To the congregation, she was a devout, loving woman who baked perfect peach cobblers for charity fundraisers and sang the loudest in the choir. But behind closed doors, she was a bitter woman who firmly believed no woman on earth was good enough for her precious golden boy. From the exact day we got married, Mama Shirley made it her personal mission to remind me of my perceived shortcomings. She would invite the head pastor and his entire family over for Sunday dinner and blatantly ignore me while Sir Darius is the best cuts of prime rib. She would whisper loudly with the church ladies about how Darius was carrying the entire financial burden of our marriage. I simply let them whisper, smiling quietly to myself, because my private encrypted bank accounts were rapidly growing larger than their entire congregation's building fund. The worst of her cruel behavior began when we started trying to build a family. I suffered 2 devastating, traumatic miscarriages during our 2nd year of marriage. Instead of offering any comfort, my mother-in-law subtly and blamed me. She would make offhand comments at Sunday dinners about how a real, blessed woman should be able to provide her successful husband with a healthy, strong child. Darius never defended me once. He would just look down at his plate and tell me not to take it personally, because his mother meant well. That was the very first crack in my trust. The second crack was purely financial and undeniably dangerous. Despite his high-paying executive job, Darius had terrible credit and a reckless habit of spending money just to look wealthy to his fraternity brothers. When it came time to move out of our upscale apartment and into a permanent house, he failed to qualify for a standard mortgage on the kind of sprawling property he desperately wanted to show off. I had an exceptional credit score and liquid savings from my forensic accounting firm. I wanted to buy a permanent house, but I refused to tie my largest financial asset to a man who lived so recklessly beyond his means. That is exactly when I went to my brother-in-law, Jamal. Jamal is a ruthless, feared corporate defense attorney and my older sister Zoe's husband. He helped me meticulously establish a private, anonymous corporation named Obsidian Trust LLC through this protected shell company. I purchased a stunning, built estate in an exclusive, gated neighborhood. The legal paperwork was ironclad and anonymous. I then presented the house to Darius as a high-end, exclusive rental property I had found through my industry connections. He loved the house immediately. It featured imported Italian marble countertops, a sprawling three-car garage, and an impressive, intimidating facade that stroked his ego perfectly. We officially signed a lease with the anonymous property management company. For 3 full years, Darius proudly and paid $5,000 a month in rent, directly into my corporate offshore account. He loved loudly, telling his friends that he was the sole powerful provider covering the rent all by himself, while I supposedly spent my income on useless designer shoes. In reality, I was building an unstoppable investment portfolio with his rent money, while easily paying the actual mortgage myself. The fragile illusion shattered on a rainy, miserable Tuesday evening. I had just gotten home from a grueling 10-hour day of tracking hidden offshore assets for a major client. I walked into the grand foyer and was immediately startled by a loud crash. My large, leather suitcase, the one I used for international business trips, had been thrown down the sweeping wooden staircase. It hit the hardwood floor with a sickening thud, popping wide open and spilling my clothes everywhere. I looked up and saw Darius standing at the very top of the stairs. He was wearing his best-tailored suit and a look of unfiltered disdain. "Get out!" His harsh voice echoed through the high ceilings of the house. I stared at him, confused and frozen in place. "What exactly are you talking about, Darius?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady despite the sudden shock. "I am talking about you leaving this house right tonight," he declared, walking slowly down the stairs, like a king descending from his throne. "I just got promoted to regional bank director. I am officially moving up in the world. Nia, I am making real powerful money now, and I am taking my rightful place in the community. I do not need a wife who works all hours, who cares more about corporate spreadsheets than her own husband, and who cannot even give me a child. I am upgrading my entire life." Before I could even process the sheer cruelty of his words, the kitchen door swung open. Out walked Mama Shirley, wearing her Sunday best and a terrifying, triumphant smirk. Following right behind her was Jada. Jada was 28 years old, the spoiled daughter of our community's most mega-church pastor. She was always held up as the perfect standard of a proper, respectful young woman. Now she was standing right in my kitchen, resting her manicured hands protectively over a noticeable baby bump. "The Lord has finally answered our fervent prayers, Nia," Mama Shirley announced loudly, her voice dripping with fake, sickening piety. She walked over and wrapped her arm protectively around Jada. "Jada is carrying the true blessed heir to this family. She is a proper, God-fearing woman who actually knows how to support a successful man. You should have known this day was rapidly coming. A barren, bitter woman who prioritizes her corporate career over her household simply cannot expect a real man to stay forever. It is simply God's divine will." The sheer audacity of her words felt like a physical blow to my chest. Jada looked at me with fake sympathy while running her hand over my imported Italian marble island. "I am so sorry," she murmured, though her dark eyes were dancing with victory. "Darius and I never meant to hurt you, it just happened. We fell in love at the exclusive church retreat last year. The baby is a blessing we simply could not ignore." Jada stroked her swelling belly and looked around the expansive, luxurious living room. "This space is going to be perfect for the baby shower," she cooed, looking at Darius with batting eyelashes. "My father, the pastor, is so thrilled that we found such a prestigious home to start our new family in. He says a man's home is a direct reflection of his powerful standing in the Lord." Darius beamed brightly at her praise, intoxicated by his own perceived power. He walked over and put his arm around Jada's waist, puffing out his chest. "You have exactly 30 minutes to pack the rest of your pathetic things," he demanded coldly. "You cannot just throw me out of my own home," I said quietly, testing the dangerous waters, waiting patiently to see exactly how far his total delusion went. "Your home?" He laughed, a harsh, barking, cruel sound. "Are you out of your mind? I pay the $5,000 rent on this place every single month. My signature is the one that matters. I am the provider here. In fact, I am calling the corporate property management company first thing tomorrow morning. I am going to tell them that I am kicking you out, and I want your name removed from the lease immediately. Jada is moving in tonight, and we are going to start setting up the nursery in your old office tomorrow. They fully expected me to cry. They expected me to fall to my knees, beg for my broken marriage, or scream in a fit of hysterical, unhinged rage. Mama Shirley was practically vibrating with intense anticipation, waiting for the angry, irrational stereotype she had always tried to project onto me to finally surface. But I felt nothing but a cold, razor-sharp clinical clarity. Mama Shirley scoffed loudly. Let her walk out, Darius, a bitter woman who cannot appreciate a good, providing man deserves to face the cold world alone. God always removes the weeds to let the beautiful flowers bloom. I looked directly at Darius, then at Jada, and finally at Mama Shirley. I did not shed a single tear. I bent down calmly, zipped up my leather suitcase, and stood back up. I grabbed my designer trench coat from the hall tree. You are right, Darius, I said softly, my voice perfectly even and terrifyingly calm. You do pay the rent. Congratulations on your promotion. I truly hope it pays exceptionally well. I turned around and walked out the oak door, letting it click shut firmly behind me. I walked down the long, manicured driveway to my car, the cool night air feeling refreshing. I climbed into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and pulled out my encrypted cell phone. I dialed my brother-in-law. Jamal answered on the very second ring. Jamal, I said, starting the powerful engine. Activate the total eviction protocol immediately. Darius just threw me out of the house and moved his pregnant mistress in. Jamal chuckled darkly, on the other end of the secure line. Say no more, Nia, it is already done. I pulled out of the gated neighborhood, smiling quietly to myself in the dark. It was time Darius learned a very humiliating lesson. He was about to find out that the faceless, intimidating corporate management company he had been paying rent to for 3 years was actually his own wife. 2 full weeks passed rapidly since that terrible night. For 14 consecutive days I maintained terrifying radio silence. I did not call, I did not text, I did not post vague emotional quotes on any social media platforms. I simply vanished from their daily lives, leaving them to construct whatever wild, delusional narrative suited their fragile egos. And they certainly did not disappoint. It was a bright Sunday morning when the smear campaign officially launched at Greater Hope Fellowship, the community megachurch where Jada's father presided as the head pastor. I was not there, of course, but my sister Zoe was sitting quietly in the third row, providing me with a real-time, detailed play-by-play via encrypted text messages. Darius and Jada made their grand, publicized entrance just as the choir finished their opening hymn, ensuring maximum visibility. According to Zoe, Darius was wearing a brand-new, tailored navy suit, unbothered by the fact that he was legally still a married man, parading his pregnant mistress in the house of the Lord. Jada wore a modest but form-fitting maternity dress, strategically holding her hand over her growing belly to draw every possible judgmental eye. But the real star of the performance was Mama Shirley. She held court in the crowded church lobby, and later in the fellowship hall, working the congregation with the manipulative skill of a seasoned politician. Zoe sent me paragraph after paragraph of the vicious fabricated lies Mama Shirley was spinning to anyone who would listen. She is telling Sister Patterson that you drained Darius's savings accounts before you ran away, Zoe texted, her frustration evident even through the digital screen. Now she has got the entire usher board gathered around her, crying real fake tears, saying you were a bitter gold digger who could not handle Darius getting a promotion. She is actually claiming that Jada is a blessing sent directly by God to rescue Darius from a barren marriage. I sat comfortably at the kitchen island of my temporary penthouse rental, sipping a warm cup of herbal tea and reading the messages with a detached, clinical sense of deep amusement. I typed back a quick, calm reply to my sister. Let them talk, Zoe, do not defend me. Do not cause a scene, just smile and take meticulous notes. The louder they arrogantly boast now, the harder they will fall when the truth comes out. Zoe sent back a single clapping emoji. She knew the strategy, she knew exactly what Jamal and I were carefully preparing. While Darius spent his entire Sunday soaking up the fake admiration of a congregation that thrived on gossip, I was busy thoroughly securing my corporate empire. Instead of directly confronting their lies, I chose to let them dig their own graves. I drove downtown to my private, secure commercial office space. As a forensic accountant, I had access to a sleek, modern fortified workspace on the 40th floor of a glass high-rise, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the sprawling city skyline. It was quiet and devoid of the chaotic drama my husband so thrived on. Jamal was already there, waiting for me, in the glass conference room. My brother-in-law was a brilliant, feared corporate attorney. He wore his weekend casual clothes, but his legal mind was as razor-sharp as ever. Spread across the large glass table were the meticulous, undeniable financial records and binding legal documents for Obsidian Trust LLC. "Look at this," Jamal said, tapping a detailed printed ledger with his gold pen. "Darius has paid exactly $180,000 in rent over the past 36 months. Every single dime went straight into the LLC corporate account. We used his rent money to easily cover the property taxes, the maintenance fees, and the premium home insurance. The rest went straight into your high-yield, aggressive investment portfolio." I smiled coldly, reviewing the thick bank statements. He always bragged so loudly about being the sole, powerful provider. He loved telling his fraternity brothers that he handled the lifting of the household finances. Meanwhile, his hard-earned money was literally paying off the entire mortgage of a house solely owned by the wife he thought was beneath him. "You structured the LLC perfectly, Jamal," I said, tracing my finger over the binding operating agreement. "There is no paper trail linking my personal name to the property management company. As far as the state registry is concerned, Obsidian Trust LLC is just another anonymous corporate entity perfectly managed by a registered agent." Jamal leaned back comfortably in his leather chair, crossing his arms. "That is the beauty of corporate asset protection, Nia. When you buy property through a blind trust or an LLC, your personal identity is shielded. Darius has no idea who actually holds the deed. When he arrogantly signed that lease 3 years ago, he signed a legally binding, airtight contract with a corporation. He waived all marital property rights to that house the exact moment his pen hit the paper, because he truly thought he was just renting from a high-end landlord." We spent the next 2 hours meticulously reviewing the specific, binding clauses of the lease agreement. I wanted to make sure every single legal avenue was covered. I knew Darius. I knew his arrogance would eventually lead him to make a careless, devastating mistake. And I needed the legal framework to be perfectly primed to trap him. "The lease is solid," Jamal assured me confidently. "It has a standard 30-day eviction clause for non-payment. But knowing Darius, he will try to leverage his new promotion to assert dominance over the management company. He is a regional bank director now. He thinks he is untouchable. He thinks he can bully a corporate landlord the exact same way he bullies people in his personal life." Just as Jamal finished his sentence, a soft chime echoed from my secure laptop. I glanced at the high-resolution screen. A new email had just arrived in the administrative inbox for Obsidian Trust LLC. The sender name made my heart skip a beat. It was Darius. I quickly mirrored my laptop screen to the large presentation monitor on the conference room wall so Jamal could see it too. We both stared silently at the incoming message. "Well," I whispered, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across my face. "Speak of the devil." I clicked open the email. The bold subject line read, "Urgent request for Regging Lees E. Gregman, VIP, tenant." I cleared my throat and read the email aloud, my voice echoing in the quiet office. "To the management team at Obsidian Trust LLC, my name is Darius and I have been a premium, valued tenant at your property for the last 3 years. I am writing to inform you of some significant, positive changes in my household and to request an immediate Favorable restructuring of my lease terms. I paused, glancing at Jamal, who was already shaking his head in disbelief. I continued reading. First, I have recently been promoted to regional director at my commercial bank. Given my elevated executive status and my payment history, I am officially requesting a 20% reduction in my monthly rent. I am sure you value having a high-profile community leader residing in your property, and I fully expect my loyalty to be rewarded with a VIP discount. Second, I have recently discarded a major financial burden. My wife is no longer residing at the property. She was holding me back, and I have successfully and permanently removed her from my life. Therefore, I demand that her name be stricken from the lease effective immediately. I am the sole powerful provider, and the only name that matters on that contract. Finally, my beautiful new partner is expecting a child. We will be bringing the true heir of my family into this home. I require your immediate, written permission to demolish the home office on the second floor. It is currently useless space that belonged to my ex-wife. I will be hiring contractors to tear down the built-in mahogany shelving and convert the room into a nursery. I fully expect you to approve these structural renovations without any delay. I look forward to your prompt and accommodating response. Sincerely, Darius, Regional Bank Director. The sheer audacity of the email hung in the air for a long moment. He was not just. He was dangerously delusional. He was demanding a discount, boasting about throwing me out, and asking for permission to destroy my built home office, all in the exact same breath. He was writing to the very woman he had just abused, demanding that she subsidize his new life with his pregnant mistress. Jamal let out a low whistle, rubbing his chin, the sheer unmitigated gall of this man. He actually put in writing that he discarded you like a financial burden. He is demanding a rent reduction from his own wife to fund his infidelity. He is actively digging his own grave, Jamal, I said, my eyes locked on the screen. He is so blinded by his new title and his mother's praise that he thinks the rules do not apply to him anymore. He wants a new lease. He wants to legally remove my name. He wants to structurally renovate my property. I turned to my brother-in-law, the gears in my mind turning at lightning speed. We are going to give him exactly what he wants, Jamal. We are going to give him enough rope to hang himself. Jamal sat up straight, pulling his wireless keyboard closer. What exactly are you thinking, Nia? I want you to draft a response from the LLC, I instructed, pacing the length of the conference room. Tell him that Obsidian Trust LLC values his executive status. Tell him we are thrilled to accommodate a VIP tenant of his caliber. Agree to the 20% rent reduction, agree to remove my name from the lease, leaving him as the sole responsible party. Agree to the structural nursery renovations, give him every single thing his ego is demanding. Jamal paused, his fingers hovering over the keys. Nia, if we formally agree to all of this, we are giving him legal permission to drastically alter the property. Why would we lower his rent? Because, I said, stopping at the window and looking out over the city, there is going to be a catch. A very specific, non-negotiable legal addendum attached to this new discounted VIP lease. We will grant him all these favors under one strict condition. Jamal smiled, catching on to my strategy. A zero-tolerance payment clause, exactly. I nodded, turning back to face him. Write the addendum in the thickest, most dense legal jargon you can muster. Hide it right beneath the section approving his precious nursery. The clause must clearly state that in exchange for the rent reduction and renovation approvals, the tenant explicitly agrees to waive all standard grace periods. If his rent payment is late by a single day, a single hour, the lease is immediately terminated. No warnings, no 30-day notices, immediate default and immediate eviction. He will never read the fine print. Jamal said, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he began drafting the response. He is far too narcissistic. He will see the rent reduction and the approval for the nursery, and he will sign it blindly just to prove to Jada and Mama Shirley exactly how powerful he is. He wants to be the big man providing for his new family, I said, walking back to the table and watching the legal trap flawlessly take shape on the screen. Let him sign his name on the dotted line. Let him take full, sole legal responsibility for a contract he cannot possibly uphold when things get tight. He truly thinks he won the house. I am going to let him celebrate his victory, just long enough for it to become his ultimate downfall. We spent the next hour perfecting the email. It was a masterpiece of corporate flattery, designed to stroke his ego while hiding a lethal legal landmine. When Jamal hit send, we both sat back and waited. We knew it would not take long. Darius was to show off. We did not have to wait more than 20 minutes. A new notification popped up on the screen. Darius had replied. He had digitally signed the new lease agreement via the automated portal, returning it with a smug, one-line response: "Thank you for recognizing my value. The renovations begin tomorrow." I let out a cold, hard laugh that echoed in the empty conference room. He had taken the bait perfectly. The trap was set and locked. He had just voluntarily signed away every single tenant protection right he had in the state, all for a discount and a nursery. "Now we wait," I told Jamal, shutting my laptop. "He has a party to plan, he has a pregnant mistress to spoil, he has an image to maintain at the church. It is only a matter of time before he bleeds his accounts dry, trying to keep up this charade." Darius truly thought he had removed a financial burden. He had no idea. He had just handed me the legal authority to destroy him the exact second he made a wrong financial move. And knowing my husband, that wrong move was already rapidly happening. The very next morning, the reality of Darius's arrogance was broadcast for the entire world to see. I woke up in my temporary rental, poured myself a cup of dark roast coffee, and opened my phone to a barrage of messages from my sister Zoe. She had sent me several screen recordings of Jada's public social media stories. I clicked the first video and watched my husband's delusional pride manifest into physical destruction. Jada was walking through my house, holding her phone high to capture every angle of the sweeping foyer. The camera then panned abruptly to the second floor, heading straight toward my home office. This was the space where I had spent countless late nights analyzing corporate portfolios, studying real estate market trends, and quietly building my empire. Now, a crew of booted contractors was actively taking sledgehammers to my beautiful built-in mahogany bookshelves. Wood splintered and drywall dusted the air as they tore down my sanctuary. Mama Shirley was standing in the corner of the room, holding a small bottle of anointing oil. She was loudly declaring to the camera that they were casting out the barren energy of the past, to make way for a true blessing from the Lord. Darius walked into the frame, handing the lead contractor a thick stack of cash while acting like he was the lord of the manor. He looked directly into the camera lens with a puffed-out chest and loudly announced that a real man always provides the best for his growing family. I closed the video, feeling a brief flash of heat rise in my chest, but I quickly extinguished it. Emotion is the ultimate enemy of strategy, and I refused to let their pathetic display cloud my clinical judgment. I opened my laptop and spread my physical financial binders across the wide quartz kitchen island. It was time to untangle my wealth from his mess. During our 5-year marriage, I had meticulously kept my primary business accounts and investment portfolios hidden within the LLC structure. However, we still maintained a few legacy joint accounts from our early days together. One of those legacy accounts was a high-yield joint corporate credit line. We opened it years ago when Darius convinced me we needed a substantial safety net for unforeseen emergencies. The credit limit was easily over $200,000, but it was approved thanks to my credit score and financial history. I had locked my physical card in a hidden safe and had not looked at the account in years. I logged into the secure banking portal with a simple intention. I wanted to freeze the joint accounts, withdraw my half of whatever minimal funds remained, and officially sever our financial ties before I handed him the divorce papers. The screen loaded with the familiar logo of Darius's commercial bank. I clicked through the standard checking and savings accounts, swiftly transferring my direct deposits. Then, my cursor hovered over the joint credit line. I clicked the link, fully expecting to see a clean zero balance. The page refreshed. I froze still. The numbers on the screen simply did not make sense. Glaring back at me in a bold, aggressive red font was a negative balance of exactly $150,000. My breath caught sharply in my throat. $150,000. The number was. I immediately clicked on the detailed transaction history tab, my mind racing through a dozen different possibilities. Was it identity theft? Did a sophisticated hacker gain access to the dormant account? I rapidly scanned the detailed ledger, and my blood instantly ran ice cold. The withdrawal was not made by a mysterious hacker. It was an internal classified automated wire transfer. And the digital timestamp on the transaction was exactly 48 hours after Darius pointed his finger at my face and threw me out of my own house. I dug deeper into the electronic paper trail. The money was wired directly to an exotic auto dealership located in the wealthiest district of downtown Atlanta. Jada was standing proudly in the wide driveway of my house. Positioned right behind her was a brand new, gleaming black Porsche Panamera featuring a cream leather interior. A ridiculous red gift bow was strapped securely to the hood. Jada was wearing a tight designer maternity dress, holding up the sleek Porsche key with a blinding, victorious smile. The caption underneath read, "When God sends you a real man who knows how to treat his queen, you hold on tight. Thank you so much, baby." It was an urgent, red-flagged email from the corporate internal auditing department sent directly to his secure device. The subject line read, "Urgent mandatory compliance audit immediate action required baby." She squealed, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. "Your mother and I were talking today, and my father agrees. We cannot just move into this gorgeous house and keep it to ourselves. The church elders are expecting a proper introduction. We need to throw a housewarming and engagement party this Saturday." Mama Shirley nodded enthusiastically from the velvet sofa. "It is the only respectable thing to do, Darius. You have elevated your status in this community. You are a powerful director now, with a beautiful new bride and a baby on the way. The pastor wants to invite the entire deacon board and the city council members. We need a live band, premium catering, and a ice sculpture. We calculated the budget, and we can easily pull off a spectacular evening for just $30,000. Of course we can throw the party." Darius lied smoothly, forcing a hollow smile onto his face. "I will handle all the finances tomorrow. You two just carefully focus on the guest list." The next 48 hours were in masterclass in pathetic. Since he could not walk into any reputable banking institution without triggering a fraud alert, Darius had to venture far outside his corporate world. He drove his car to a shady industrial park on the outskirts of the city. He walked into a dingy, high-interest title loan office, a place he used to mock his low-income clients for using. The loan shark sitting behind the thick bulletproof glass did not care about Darius's tailored suit or his regional director title. He only cared about the pink slip to Darius's sedan and the predatory 40% interest rate printed on the contract. Darius signed away the title to his personal car and accepted a predatory hard money loan just to secure $30,000 in liquid cash. He took that dirty money and immediately began throwing it at florists, premium caterers, and a string quartet. He paid cash for a tent to be erected in my backyard. He bought top-shelf liquor to impress the church deacons. He rapidly bled out every single dollar of that loan to construct an illusion of prosperity that was destined to collapse. Through my network of community informants, mainly my sister Zoe and her friends in the event planning industry, I watched his rapid financial hemorrhage in real time. Zoe texted me photos of the catering invoices and the floral arrangements. He was spending cash like a cartel boss. I sat quietly in my office reading the messages and sipping my coffee. The sheer stupidity of his actions was almost breathtaking to witness. He was so intensely focused on maintaining his fake kingdom for Saturday night that he forgot about the very foundation he was standing on. He forgot about the calendar, The white tents were erected on my lawn. The crystal glasses were successfully delivered. But while they were busy preparing to toast to their fabricated success, the digital clock on my office computer quietly ticked over to midnight. The month officially ended. It was the first of the month. The automated billing system for Obsidian Trust LLC initiated its scheduled protocol. It sent an electronic request to Darius's primary checking account to pull the newly discounted rent payment of $4,000. The system rapidly attempted to process the transaction. The banking network, fortified by the internal corporate fraud freeze I had initiated days earlier, immediately rejected the request. My encrypted phone buzzed on my nightstand. A automated notification from the property management software glowed brightly on the screen. Transaction failed, insufficient funds, and account frozen. Tenant Darius has deft on the movely payment. I smiled into the darkness, feeling a profound sense of terrifying power. Because all his stolen cash was tied up in a ridiculous party, and his corporate accounts were frozen, Darius had just missed his rent payment. The strict zero-tolerance addendum he had arrogantly signed without reading was now legally active. He had just voluntarily triggered his own immediate eviction. The financial software recognized the failed transaction from his locked banking profile. It did not hesitate, it instantly generated a formal default notice. The legal machinery I had carefully designed with Jamal was now running on autopilot. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and watched the bright sunrise over the city, feeling a profound sense of peace. Darius had built his entire identity on the illusion of financial dominance. Now, his own negligence was going to strip him of his fabricated kingdom. Across town at my house, the morning was unfolding in chaos. The white tents were being secured on my manicured back lawn. Jada was lounging on my velvet sofa, barking annoying orders at the delivery staff. In the middle of this frantic storm, the doorbell rang. It was a verified legal courier requiring a direct signature. Darius, annoyed at the sudden interruption to his grand performance, marched to the door. He snatched the thick envelope and ripped it open. Inside was the formal 3-day notice to quit. The legal document boldly stated that due to non-payment of rent under the newly executed VIP lease agreement, the tenant was in immediate and irreversible default. He had exactly 72 hours to vacate the premises or face forced physical removal by law enforcement. A rational, sane person would have panicked, but Darius was running on adrenaline and sheer delusion. According to the catering staff member who witnessed the entire exchange, he simply scoffed loudly. He rolled his eyes, letting out a loud laugh. He crumpled the legal document into a tight ball and tossed it directly into the kitchen trash can. He boasted loudly to his mistress and his mother that he would just call the regional director of the property group on Monday morning and get whoever sent that disrespectful notice fired immediately. He truly believed his fake title made him invincible. He chose to ignore a legally binding eviction notice so he could go back to tasting champagne samples. He thought he could easily bully a faceless corporation later. He had no idea the corporation had my face. While Darius was busy ignoring reality, Jamal and I were at the county courthouse making that terrifying reality inescapable. We easily bypassed the slow-moving administrative lines because Jamal knew exactly how to navigate the complex legal system flawlessly. We sat in a small wooden chamber, waiting for the presiding judge to carefully review our fast-tracked documents. The judge scrutinized the specific legal addendum Darius had signed just days prior. The legal language was unyielding. The tenant had voluntarily waived all standard grace periods in exchange for a requested rent reduction and permission to structurally alter the property. The bank statements provided by our corporate account clearly proved the rent payment had bounced due to frozen external assets. The signed courier receipt definitively proved Darius had been legally and officially served the notice to quit. There were no loopholes left for him to exploit. The judge looked up from the thick file, tapped his brass pen on the wooden desk, and firmly signed the emergency eviction order. The swift, calculated stroke of his pen officially stripped Darius of any legal right to occupy my home. The property was legally returned to my full lawful possession. Jamal gracefully gathered the stamped documents, sliding them into his sleek leather briefcase with a sharp, satisfying snap. We confidently walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. The legal battle was finalized. All that remained was the physical execution of the powerful order. I returned to my secure office to finalize some high-level corporate auditing reports. Feeling lighter than air, I was finally taking my entire life back. As I was packing up my secure laptop for the evening, my personal email chimed. It was a message from my cousin Marcus. He had forwarded me an electronic invitation with a note attached that simply said, "You need to see the sheer audacity of this fool." I clicked the attachment, and my jaw actually dropped. It was a glossy, designed digital flyer featuring an engagement photo of Darius and Jada. They were standing proudly on the grand, sweeping staircase of my house. The gold text announced a spectacular evening of love and blessings, celebrating their engagement and their beautiful new home. The event was scheduled for this coming Saturday night at exactly 7 o'clock. They were hosting their grand societal debut in the exact house they were legally ordered to vacate. They were planning to proudly parade around my Italian marble floors, drinking champagne bought with predatory loan money while pretending to be the ultimate power couple. The sheer irony of the timing was far too perfect to ignore. Standard eviction procedures usually involved a polite knock on the door by a board deputy on a random Tuesday morning. But this was not a standard situation. Darius had publicly humiliated me. He had thrown me out into the cold night to make room for his pregnant mistress. I was not about to let him enjoy his victory lap in peace. He wanted an audience to witness his grand elevation in status. I decided I was going to proudly give that audience a show they would never forget. I pulled out my secure phone and rapidly scrolled through my encrypted contacts until I found the personal cell number of Frank Davis. Frank was the respected county sheriff. He was also a fiercely loyal old family friend who had served in the military alongside my late father. He had known me since I was a little girl, and he knew exactly the kind of strong, independent corporate woman I had become. I pressed the call button and listened to the secure line ring. He answered, with his booming, familiar voice, immediately recognizing my private number. "Naya, my favorite girl," he said warmly, "how is the corporate forensic business treating you?" I leaned back comfortably in my ergonomic office chair, a cold, calculated smile forming on my lips. "The business is treating me exceptionally well, Uncle Frank," I replied, my voice perfectly smooth. "But I actually have a specific favor to ask you. Are you by any chance working this coming Saturday night?" I heard him shift on the other end of the line, intrigued by my icy tone. "I am the active sheriff, Nia. I am always working. What exactly do you need?" I took a slow, deep breath, visualizing the white tents and the smirk on my husband's face. "I have a sensitive, verified court-ordered eviction to serve, Uncle Frank," I said, locking my sharp eyes on the digital invitation glowing brightly on my computer screen. "And I want to do it right in the exact center of a high society gala." There was a brief, tense pause, followed by a deep, rumbling chuckle from the veteran lawman. He knew I never asked for favors lightly, and he knew my father had explicitly raised me to handle my complex business with merciless precision. "Send me the exact address and the stamped court order, Nia," he said, his voice turning sharply. "I will personally assemble a tactical squad. We will make sure your property is returned to you exactly the way you want it." I thanked him politely, ended the call, and firmly closed my laptop. The grand stage was perfectly set. The legal documents were fully signed. The law enforcement escort was permanently secured. Darius thought he was going to throw the party of the decade, to celebrate his new life. He had no idea his grand celebration was going to be the exact location of his total destruction. Saturday night arrived rapidly with a suffocating humidity that perfectly matched the electric tension building in my chest. While I was sitting comfortably in the back of an police cruiser, parked discreetly down the street, my sister Zoe was deep inside the house providing me with a live feed of the unfolding circus. She had skillfully managed to secure an exclusive invitation through a mutual friend solely to act as my eyes and ears on the ground. According to her detailed text messages, the sheer level of financial recklessness on display was. Darius had truly spared no expense with his predatory loan money, determined to project an image of supreme wealth. The sprawling front lawn was brightly illuminated by towering uplighting, casting a warm golden glow over the white tents erected in the transformed backyard. A paid classical string quartet was perfectly positioned in the grand foyer, playing background music that floated softly through the open French doors. Waiters dressed in white tuxedos circulated smoothly through the dense crowd carrying silver trays loaded with premium champagne, imported caviar, and hors d'oeuvre. The exclusive guest list was a meticulously curated collection of the most influential and status-obsessed figures in our local community. The entire church deacon board was there in full force, standing proudly alongside local city council members and business owners whom Darius had desperately tried to impress for years. And of course, the ultimate guest of honor was Jada's father, the esteemed pastor of Greater Hope Fellowship. He stood proudly near the stone fireplace, holding court with his booming authoritative voice, convinced that he was standing in the permanent home of a successful banking executive who was going to drastically elevate his family's social status. It was a masterclass in total superficiality, and every single detail was funded by. Right in the center of the living room, Mama Shirley was having the time of her life. Zoe sent me a brief audio clip where I could clearly hear her loud voice echoing over the classical music. She was boldly leading a group of church mothers on a guided tour of my home, taking unearned credit for every single architectural detail I had personally designed and paid for. Jada was proudly parading right beside her, perfectly playing the role of the blushing, affluent bride-to-be. She was wearing a skin-tight designer gown that specifically accentuated her pregnancy, and she was practically shoving her left hand into the face of anyone who walked by. The diamond engagement ring sparking under the recessed lighting was undeniably exactly the kind of aesthetic Darius always gravitated toward. She proudly guided the pastor and his wife toward the sweeping wooden staircase, pointing excitedly to the second floor. She loudly proclaimed that Darius was currently remodeling the entire upstairs to forcefully build a nursery because he wanted to erase the negative energy of his past mistakes. They were celebrating the destruction of my personal sanctuary while drinking champagne poured directly on my property. They were laughing loudly and toasting to a future built on my stolen credit. But while the women were busy basking in their fabricated glory, the orchestrator of this lie was quietly falling apart at the seams. Darius was standing near the outdoor bar, trying desperately to maintain his facade. He had a crystal glass of top-shelf bourbon tightly in his hand and a smile plastered across his face. But Zoe clearly noticed the beads of cold sweat forming at his temples. He kept repeatedly shifting his weight, adjusting the collar of his new tailored suit as if the fabric was actively choking him. His eyes were constantly darting toward the front gate, jumping wildly at every passing shadow or unexpected loud noise. Every few minutes, he would hastily retreat to a quiet corner, pull his encrypted phone from his pocket, stare at the glowing screen with terror, and quickly shove it back away. He was receiving relentless, aggressive text messages from the shady title loan company, demanding their weekly interest payment. His corporate banking accounts remained locked. His executive suspension was still active and looming over his head like a. He was boldly hosting a $30,000 high society gala with literally $0 to his actual name. He was a dead man walking, trying desperately to pretend he was dancing gracefully. When Jada excitedly approached him, demanding that he make a grand romantic speech to warmly thank her father for his pastoral blessing, Darius physically flinched hard. He forcefully leaned down and kissed her cheek, but his hands were trembling so badly, He had to quickly set his bourbon glass down on the granite counter before he dropped it. The crushing weight of the illusion was suffocating him. He knew he was surrounded by community leaders who would abandon and ostracize him the exact second they fully realized he was a broke fraud facing federal wire fraud charges. He thought he could just buy a few more days to quickly figure out a lie. He did not get a miracle, he got me. I gave the strict signal to Sheriff Davis, who was sitting firmly in the driver's seat next to me. He nodded sharply, his face set in a grim mask, picked up his radio, and instructed the marked patrol vehicles parked quietly around the corner to move in. We drove slowly up the long private driveway, the bright red and blue police lights flashing silently against the manicured oak trees. The police cruisers pulled up right behind the stolen black Porsche, parked perfectly near the entrance. I stepped boldly out of the vehicle into the night air, feeling a surge of power coursing through my veins. I was not wearing my usual dark corporate business attire. Tonight required something specific. I wore an immaculate, tailored white power suit cut to perfection, paired perfectly with classic red stiletto heels. My hair was styled flawlessly, and my makeup was sharp, precise, and intimidating. I did not look like a broken, discarded wife crying over a failed marriage. I forcefully looked like the corporate executioner arriving to collect a debt. Jamal stepped sharply out of the car right behind me, adjusting his tie and firmly holding a thick leather folder containing the stamped, verified court documents. Sheriff Davis and two of his armed uniformed deputies perfectly flanked us, their hands resting casually on their duty belts, creating an undeniable wall of legal authority. We proudly walked up the wide stone steps together, our footsteps synchronized and deliberate against the concrete. I did not bother safely knocking on the door or politely ringing the bell. I reached out, placed my hands flat against the double oak front doors, and pushed them wide open. They swung inward with a dramatic bang that echoed and through the grand foyer. The classical string quartet stopped playing instantly, their bows freezing mid-air in shock. The lively chatter of 70 high society guests abruptly died, turning the house silent. Every single head in the room turned toward the entrance, drawn by sudden aggressive intrusion. And there I proudly stood, framed perfectly in the doorway in my brilliant white suit, staring directly into the terrified wide eyes of the man who thought he had defeated me. The collective gasp from the crowd was exactly like a sudden vacuum sucking the air out of the grand foyer. For 3 agonizingly long seconds, nobody moved. I stood exceptionally tall in my tailored white suit, letting my presence radiate powerfully through the room. I locked eyes with Darius, watching the initial wave of profound confusion wash over his face. The warm ambient lighting of the house cast a bright glow over his new tailored suit, but it could not hide the sudden fearful twitch forming in his jaw. Then came the sharp sound that officially broke the hypnotic spell. A piercing crash echoed from the center of the formal living room. Mama Shirley had dropped her premium champagne glass. The delicate crystal shattered into dozens of jagged pieces across the Italian marble floor. The very same marble she had just proudly claimed her son imported for his new bride. Darius recovered from his initial paralysis, and his deep confusion instantly morphed into a blind, explosive rage. The veins in his neck bulged visibly against his tightly buttoned collar. He stomped across the grand foyer, his leather shoes crunching over the shattered glass. He ignored the fact that he was making a scene in front of his esteemed high society guests. He stopped exactly a few feet away from me, his chest heaving with indignation. He raised his right hand and pointed his index finger directly at my face. It was the exact same dismissive gesture he had used 2 weeks ago. "How dare you boldly show your face here?" he roared, his voice booming across the silent room. "You have no shame, Nia. You are a bitter, jealous woman. Get out of my house right now before I call the cops and have you dragged out in handcuffs." I did not flinch, I did not step back. I stood my ground firmly, looking at his pointing finger, and then directly into his furious eyes. I let a slow, amused smile spread across my face. I am not the one who needs to worry about the police. Darius, I said smoothly, my voice perfectly calm and carrying effortlessly through the tense quiet. I took one deliberate, calculated step to the side. As I moved smoothly out of the center of the doorway, the shadows of the front porch gave way to the harsh, legal truth I had proudly brought with me. Jamal stepped forward, his posture and commanding. He glared at Darius with disgust. But Jamal was not the sight that made the color begin to drain rapidly from my husband's face. Right behind Jamal, moving with the synchronized weight of legal authority, was Sheriff Davis and two towering, armed uniformed county deputies. Their silver badges gleamed brightly, the utility belts, strapped to their waists, clinked softly, emphasizing the deafening silence of the room. Outside the grand entryway, the red and blue flashing lights of their marked patrol cruisers bounced off the white columns. Darius swallowed hard, his pointing finger slowly lowering to his side. The aggressive bravado that had fueled him suddenly hit a brick wall of state-sanctioned reality. He took a small, involuntary step backward. Jada immediately switched smoothly into her default role of the helpless, persecuted victim. She let out a loud, theatrical gasp, tightly grabbing her pregnant belly, as if my mere presence was causing her physical pain. She scurried rapidly across the room, throwing her arms around her father. "Daddy, do something," she wailed loudly, producing fake tears. "She is trying to ruin my special night." The pastor puffed out his chest proudly, ready to deliver a booming sermon. But before he could loudly confront me, Mama Shirley marched ahead, pushing her way to the front with furious determination. She marched right up to Sheriff Davis, pointing her finger at me just like her son had done. "Officer, you need to arrest this woman immediately," Mama Shirley shrieked loudly. "My son is a respected regional bank director, and he pays the mortgage on this estate. I demand that you forcefully put her in handcuffs." Sheriff Davis stood like a stone statue. Unfazed, the veteran lawman slowly unclipped a metal clipboard from his tactical belt. He looked down at the thick stack of court-stamped documents, then looked directly at Darius, who was now sweating profusely. "Nobody is arresting her, ma'am," Sheriff Davis stated, his tone ringing with undeniable legal finality. "We are here to forcefully escort you off her property." The entire house seemingly stopped breathing. The total silence was so profound. Darius froze. Paralyzed, the smirk had been wiped from his face, replaced by a look of sheer terror. Jamal stepped into the center of the grand foyer. He did not look directly at Darius. He addressed the entire room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jamal loudly announced, "welcome to the private property of Obsidian Trust LLC. I am the acting corporate legal counsel for the sole proprietor and exclusive owner of this estate. That actual owner is standing right here." Jamal gestured gracefully toward me. Darius let out a harsh sound that was half scream and half choked gasp. "That is an A," he roared. "You are running a scam. I log into a secure portal every single month. I have the actual receipts. I imported this exact Italian marble." I took a slow, deliberate step forward, the sharp click of my red stiletto heels echoing beautifully. "You are right, Darius," I said, holding his panicked gaze. "You do pay exactly $5,000 a month to a corporate property management firm. You never bothered to look past the aggressive blind trust. If you had, you would have realized that the faceless corporations you were so to impress is me." Darius froze, his jaw dropping. "The deposit you proudly paid," I continued smoothly. "The monthly rent, every single aggressive dime of it, was directly deposited into my corporate offshore accounts. You never imported this Italian marble, Darius. I flew to Milan and picked it out myself. You are not a homeowner, you never were, you are just a tenant. And as of Tuesday, when your banking accounts were frozen and your rent check bounced, you officially became a defaulting tenant." I securely reached into Jamal's portfolio and smoothly pulled out the emergency eviction order, carrying the thick embossed seal of the county court. I walked straight past him and stopped directly in front of Jada's father. I gracefully held the eviction order firmly out. "Pastor," I stated, "your future son-in-law is not the wealthy provider he claims to be. He has no legal right to this property. He successfully failed to actively pay his rent, triggering his own immediate eviction. The pastor took the document with trembling hands. He read the terms of the eviction. He read the registered name of the LLC matching my own. His face drained of all color. He stared directly at Darius with humiliation. The crowd rapidly began loudly whispering. The city council members quickly stepped back, physically distancing themselves from Darius. Darius let out a ragged breath. The harsh reality of his situation crashed down on him. His tailored suit wrinkled as he fell to his knees onto the cold Italian marble floor, tightly grasping his head. Mama Shirley began to loudly hyperventilate, tightly gasping for air. Just as Darius knelt sobbing loudly on the floor, the oak front doors swung wide open a second time. Standing in the threshold was a striking, powerful older woman. She wore an sharp dark evening gown. She was the wife of the chief executive officer of the very bank Darius worked for. She walked with deliberate, terrifying precision straight into the center of the grand foyer. She locked her icy, piercing gaze and exclusively directly on Jada. The temperature in the room plummeted. "Since we are airing dirty laundry tonight," the CEO's wife stated smoothly, dropping a manila envelope onto the catering table. Glossy photographs spilled everywhere. He proudly thought he could carry on an illicit affair for over a year. He bought an apartment for his little side piece. She pointed directly at Jada. The photographs showed Jada and the powerful CEO tightly entering hotels. But the little side piece got careless. She ended up pregnant. My husband panicked. A corporate scandal would forcibly strip him of his executive compensation package. So, he bought a permanent solution. The CEO's wife held up a certified banking receipt. "He paid you a lump sum of cash, Jada, to actively keep his name off the birth certificate. He ordered you to forcefully find a convenient fall guy. You desperately needed a gullible, status-obsessed subordinate who was fully easy to manipulate." The entire room turned to look at Darius. "My husband pointed you directly toward his most regional director," the CEO's wife stated coldly. "You actively targeted him, Jada. You stroked his fragile ego." Jada broke down into loud, ugly sobs. The pastor stepped away from his own daughter in disgust. But the CEO's wife was not finished. She turned to look at Darius. "By the way, Darius, you made a catastrophic error when you arrogantly used your administrative access to bypass dual authorization on your joint corporate credit line." Darius gasped loudly, choking on his own breath. "My husband terminated your employment yesterday morning," she announced, "and he officially filed federal wire fraud charges against you for actively embezzling exactly $150,000 to buy a stolen Porsche. The armed federal financial agents are currently actively waiting outside by the front gates right now to successfully place you in permanent federal custody." Darius collapsed forward, slamming his hands into the Italian marble. He sobbed loudly, fully destroyed. Sheriff Davis grabbed Darius by the collar and hauled him to his feet, snapping thick steel handcuffs tightly around his shaking wrists. Darius actively cried as he was forcibly marched out of the front doors. Mama Shirley slumped against the wall, her reputation vaporized. I stood on the front porch, actively in check. The federal agents secured Darius in the marked vehicle. The night air blew through my hair. They arrogantly thought they could abuse me. They underestimated the power of a silent strategist. I belong rooted in a world where justice prevails over delusions. Always remember that true power does not come from a trust fund or a prestigious title. It comes from resilience, undeniable competence, and the quiet certainty of your own value.